National parks are supposed to be safe monuments of nature, built for beauty, peace, and wonder. But when the sun goes down and the last ranger locks the gates, those forests and canyons become something else. Miles of untouched wilderness, ancient caves, abandoned service roads, and shadows that move long after you stop hearing footsteps. Every year, people vanish inside these parks without a trace. Some are found days later, dazed and silent. Others are never found at all. The stories you're about to hear come from campers, hikers, and rangers who stepped off the path just long enough to realize how small we really are out there. These are 7 true national park horror stories that will terrify you. Story 1. The Ranger Who Wasn't There. You don't think about how big a national park really is until you're alone in one. No traffic, no signal, just endless forest and the echo of your own breathing. That's what makes it beautiful and terrifying. It was 2019 when I took a solo trip to Yellowstone National Park. I wanted to clear my head after a bad breakup, so I rented a cabin for a week near the edge of the forest, not far from one of the less traveled ranger trails. The first few days were perfect quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, occasional distant howls that reminded me just how wild the place really was. On the 4th night, I decided to hike one of the old Firewatch paths. The sun was fading, and the forest was washed in that orange-gold glow that makes everything feel eternal. I told myself I'd be back before dark. I wasn't. About halfway through the loop, the path split. The map showed no fork, but there it was, one trail heading uphill, the other down toward the river. I figured the upper path would lead to a lookout, so I took it. The forest grew quieter the higher I went. No birds, no insects, just wind through dead branches. When I reached a flat clearing, I realized the air smelled strange, like wet ash and metal. That's when I heard the voice. "Hey there!" I turned. A ranger was walking up the path behind me, tall, uniformed, hat low over his eyes. Relief hit me instantly. "Sorry," I said, laughing nervously. "Didn't mean to wander off the main trail." He smiled. It looked wrong, too wide, like he was forcing it. "Not a problem," he said softly. "You're not the first to lose your way." He stopped a few feet away. His badge was tarnished, unreadable, and the name tag on his chest was half torn off. "You're out late," he said. "Shouldn't be here after sundown. Not safe." "I know," I said. "I was just heading back." He tilted his head. "You sure about that?" I frowned. "Yeah, why?" He didn't answer, just stared for a few seconds longer, then turned and started walking back down the trail. I followed, but after a few minutes, I realized I couldn't hear his footsteps anymore. When I rounded the bend, he was gone. No branches snapping, no crunch of gravel, just empty woods. I kept moving, trying to find the main path again. The light faded fast, and the forest seemed to fold in on itself. After another 20 minutes, I saw something up ahead, a light. Soft, flickering. It was a ranger cabin. I nearly cried with relief. The door was open, and inside, a fire burned low in the stove. "Hello," I called. No answer. There was a coat hanging on the wall, the same uniform I'd seen earlier, the same torn name tag. On the table sat a metal radio, its dials old and rusted. I tried to turn it on, but all I got was static. Then, faintly through the noise, a voice. "If you see him, don't follow." The static cut out. The fire dimmed, and behind me, the cabin door creaked open. I turned slowly. The ranger was standing there, same face, same impossible smile, but now his eyes were wrong gray and hollow, like smoke was swirling inside them. "You found my post," he said. I took a step back. I thought this was the station." "It was," he said, "once." He stepped closer. "You shouldn't have come here." I bolted, ran straight into the trees, branches whipping my arms, didn't stop until my lungs burned. When I finally looked back, the light from the cabin was gone. The forest behind me was completely dark. By some miracle, I found the trailhead again around midnight, collapsed beside my car, and slept there until dawn. When I woke up, a real ranger truck was parked nearby. The ranger, a woman in her 50s, asked if I was okay. I told her everything. Her face went pale. "That cabin you're describing," she said, "it burned down back in the 80s. One of our men died in the fire. Never found his body." She paused, then added quietly, "Some hikers still say they see him, tries to walk them back to safety, but he never makes it out himself." I left the park that morning, but that night, when I got home, I unpacked my bag and found something at the bottom, a small metal badge, charred around the edges, the letters barely visible. It read Ranger H. Cole. I didn't pick it up, I just left it there, and sometimes when I can't sleep, I swear I still hear that voice in my head. You are not the first to lose your way. Story 2, the campsite that answered back. Most people go camping to disconnect, to get away from the noise, the screens, the constant hum of the world. But sometimes, the silence you find out there isn't yours alone. In 2016, my girlfriend Mia and I took a trip to Zion National Park. We were college seniors, broke but restless, and figured a week under the stars was better than another night in our cramped apartment. The first 2 days were perfect clear skies, bright sun, and nights so quiet you could hear the wind slide through the cliffs. We camped near an old trail known as the Angel's Rest Loop. It wasn't an official site, but there was enough flat ground for a tent and a view of the canyon that didn't feel real. The park ranger at the visitor station had warned us, "Don't go past the loop after dark. The paths aren't marked well down there." We promised we wouldn't. We lied. On the third night, we built a fire and cooked ramen, watching the sky shift from deep blue to black. When the wind died, it got so still that we could hear the fire cracking like glass. That's when Mia said something that made my stomach twist. "Do you hear that?" I listened, a voice faint, distant, somewhere down the trail. It wasn't a shout. It sounded like someone talking softly. "Probably another camper," I said. "No," she whispered. "It's saying my name." We both froze. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Mia." Long pause, then quieter. "Come here." It sounded female, almost like her own voice being played back through an old speaker. Mia stood up. "Someone's messing with us." "Sit down," I said, grabbing her arm. "We'll check in the morning." The voice stopped. Then, "Please." Just one word, begging. I grabbed the flashlight and pointed it toward the trail. Empty, no movement. But the moment I turned off the light, the voice started again, closer this time. "Come here." Mia clamped a hand over her mouth. We sat there, not moving, until the fire burned down to embers. "Finally," I whispered. "We're not alone, are we?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the tree line. And that's when I saw it, a shadow between the trees, just tall enough to be human. It was standing perfectly still. I threw a rock. It didn't move, didn't flinch, just stayed there, watching. Then, in perfect imitation of my voice, it said, "Mia." I didn't wait. I grabbed her and we ran straight to the tent, zipped it shut, and sat in the dark. The whispering continued outside, soft, slow, circling us like a breeze that didn't belong to the wind. "Come here, please, don't leave." Each voice sounded different, male, female, young, old, but they all said the same things. Around midnight, it stopped. No footsteps, no sound, just that deep, impossible silence you only get in the wild. We didn't sleep. At sunrise, we packed fast and hiked back toward the main road. Halfway there, we ran into a real ranger, a tall guy in his 40s with sunburned skin and a clipboard. "You two all right?" he asked. I told him what happened, the voices, the shadow, everything. He didn't laugh, didn't even blink. "You camped near the Angel's Rest Loop, didn't you?" We nodded. He sighed. "That section's been closed for years. Too many reports like yours." "Reports?" I asked. "Voices, echoes that answer back when no one's there." He looked at Mia. "They sound familiar, don't they?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah," she whispered, "like me." He led us back to the station, handed us a form to fill out, and said, almost as an afterthought, "It's the canyon walls. They catch sound, bend it, make it come back different." That explanation should have made me feel better. It didn't. Before we left, I asked him one last thing. "Have you ever heard it yourself?" He hesitated. "Once," he said quietly, "but it didn't call my name. It called my wife's." We left that morning and never went back, but a week later, Mia started hearing it again in our apartment. At first, I thought it was sleep paralysis. She'd wake up crying, saying she heard someone whispering from the hallway. Then one night, I heard it too. "Come here." It was faint, but it was there, coming from outside the bedroom door. I opened it, and for a split second, I thought I saw someone standing in the dark, same height, same build as me. But when I flicked on the light, nothing. Just my own shadow stretching down the hall. Mia moved out a month later, said she couldn't take it anymore, that she felt followed. I haven't heard the voice since, not really. But sometimes, when I'm driving late at night with the windows down, I swear I can hear it faintly in the wind. "Come here." And every time I do, I roll up the window, because if I listen long enough, the voice starts to sound like mine. Story 3. The Disappearing Campsite in Yosemite. Yosemite is one of those places that feels older than time itself. The granite cliffs, the redwoods, the silence between waterfalls, you can almost feel the land remembering everything that's ever happened there. But some memories don't stay buried. In 2020, a man named Evan Cole took a solo camping trip through Yosemite Valley. He'd just quit his job at a software company in San Diego and wanted to unplug. He told his friends he'd be gone a week. He came back 3 days later, looking like he hadn't slept in years. He didn't say much about what happened, just that he'd seen something he couldn't explain. A few months later, he wrote about it online. This is his story. Evan started his hike on a Thursday morning, planning to follow the Merced Ridge Trail up to a remote camping area near the river. It was early spring cold, bright, beautiful. By sunset, he'd found the perfect spot, a small clearing surrounded by pine trees and moss-covered rock. He pitched his tent, made a fire, and watched the light fade off Half Dome in the distance. Everything felt peaceful. Until he heard voices. It started subtle laughter, maybe 100 feet away. He figured it was another group of hikers setting up nearby. But when he called out, "Hey, anyone out there?" the voices stopped instantly. No footsteps, no rustling, just the hiss of his fire. He shrugged it off, assuming the sound had carried weirdly in the valley. That night, the wind picked up, and he fell asleep to the sound of trees creaking like doors being opened. At 2:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. One bar of service, a text from an unknown number. "Nice campsite." He froze. The message was time-stamped 1 minute earlier. He tried calling the number, no response. He unzipped the tent flap, shined his flashlight outside. Nothing. No footprints, no light, no sound, just darkness. He turned the phone off and waited for morning. The next day, the park felt different. The sky had gone gray, the air colder. When he walked down to refill his water bottle, he noticed something odd: no birds, not one. He checked his GPS to make sure he hadn't wandered off the main trail, and that's when he realized the marker for his campsite was gone. The app still showed his location, but there was no record of him ever setting up there. Just blank space. He hiked another mile downstream, then turned back to find the trailhead. But when he reached the clearing, his tent was gone. No tracks, no ashes from the fire, just smooth, untouched ground, as if no one had ever been there. He panicked, checked his phone again. No service now, not even a flicker. He started back toward the valley, but the forest didn't look right. The trees were denser, the ground sloped in new directions, and the sunlight kept shifting, like clouds were moving fast above him. But when he looked up, the sky was perfectly clear. Then, through the trees, he saw something red. A tent. His tent? He sprinted toward it, but the closer he got, the more wrong it looked. The fabric wasn't red anymore. It was darker, almost brown, and moving slightly, like it was breathing. He stopped 10 feet away. The zipper slid down on its own. Inside was nothing: no gear, no sleeping bag, no floor. Just a hole in the earth, black, deep, silent. Then, from inside the hole, a whisper. "Nice campsite." Evan stumbled backward, tripping over a root. The whisper grew louder, then became several voices murmuring, laughing, all around him. He turned and ran, not caring where he was going. Branches tore at his jacket. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. When he finally stopped, he pulled it out. One new photo. It was him standing in the clearing, looking into the camera. The timestamp said it was taken 10 minutes in the future. He dropped the phone and kept running until he found the river. Followed it for hours until he saw people again, a family of hikers who led him back to the ranger station. He didn't say much at first. When the ranger pressed, he showed her the text message. She frowned. "That's impossible. There's no signal out there." He showed her the photo. She didn't say a word, just turned her computer around and pulled up a folder on the park server. Inside were dozens of images, all taken from various phones and cameras found along the Merced Ridge Trail. Each one showed the same clearing, from different angles, at different times of day. And in every photo, someone was standing in the background, always the same person. A man looking directly at the camera, smiling. Evan left the park that night. He deleted the number, the messages, everything. A week later, he posted his story online, said it helped him get it out of his head. But the post disappeared within hours. When someone asked why, he replied, "Because they found me again." That was his last message. 6 months later, a hiker found an unmarked campsite off the same trail. Inside the tent was a phone, its screen cracked, battery dead. The rangers powered it on and found a single photo: a man standing in the clearing, holding a camera, half smiling at the lens. The metadata confirmed it was taken the week Evan vanished. But here's the part that still bothers them, the timestamp. It was dated 3 days in the future. Story 4. The Vanishing Hiker in Glacier Park. The thing about the mountains is you can see everything from up there. Every ridge, every tree line, every shadow. But somehow, the people who disappear in those parks are never seen again. In 2018, a man named Daniel Price vanished while hiking alone in Glacier National Park, Montana. He was an inexperienced former Army, avid outdoorsman, and, according to his sister, meticulous about safety. He'd been hiking since he was a kid, but that weekend, he broke his own rule. He went off trail. They found his car parked at the trailhead, his gear inventory listed neatly on a clipboard, but Daniel never came back. The following account comes from the ranger who led the search, a man named Tom Riley, who has never spoken publicly about what he saw until now. Tom had been with the Park Service for 20 years, seen his share of rescues and recoveries. But Daniel's case, he said, didn't feel like the others. The first strange thing, the weather. Glacier Park was clear that weekend, no fog, no storms. Yet the search team reported hearing thunder, even though the sky was perfectly blue. Tom thought it was stress, until the second day. That's when they found the fire pit. It sat in a clearing less than a mile from where Daniel's GPS last pinged. The coals were cold, but the ashes were strange. Too fine, too uniform, like sand from a beach, not burned wood. Beside it, a single boot print, deep, crisp, facing downhill. And near the center of the pit, something metallic, Daniel's compass, its glass cracked and the needle spinning slowly in place, as if magnetized to something nearby. That night, the search party camped close to the site. Tom said it was the quietest night he'd ever spent in the park. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. Even the wind had stopped. Around 2 a.m., he woke to the sound of someone whistling, a long, low tune, the kind hikers use to signal to each other. He unzipped his tent and called out, "Daniel, that you?" No answer, just the faint sound of whistling moving deeper into the forest. He followed it. The moonlight was thin, but enough to see the trail. After a few hundred feet, he spotted a figure standing by a dead tree tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a red flannel shirt. Daniel Tom shouted. The man didn't turn, didn't move at all, just kept facing the tree. Tom ran closer, his flashlight bouncing wildly off the rocks, but when he reached the spot, the figure was gone. Only the smell of burned metal lingered in the air. The next morning, the team found something new. About 50 yards from the clearing, a narrow ridge led to a sheer drop overlooking a ravine. At the edge, someone had carved words into the dirt with a stick. Not alone. No footprints led to or from it, just that phrase, etched deep into the frozen soil. By the 4th day, they called off the search. The official report listed environmental disorientation. Unofficially, Tom couldn't shake the feeling he'd been watched the whole time. A week later, the park reopened the trail. Tom returned alone to check for campers. He hiked to the same ridge. Everything looked normal, same trees, same silence. But when he reached the clearing, his radio crackled. Through the static came a voice. Tom. He froze. Daniel. It's cold here. Then nothing, just the hiss of static and the faint sound of that same whistling tune, somewhere deep below the ridge. He followed the sound again down the switchbacks, through the narrow trees, and halfway down, he found a boot. Daniel's. It was wedged between 2 rocks, laces torn, the fabric scorched. And inside, a Polaroid photo. It showed the clearing, taken from above like from a drone or a cliff, but there was something in the frame that hadn't been there before. A second fire pit, fresh, still smoking. And beside it, two figures standing side by side. One of them looked exactly like Tom. He turned and ran back up the ridge. When he reached the top, the forest was completely silent again. Even the birds had stopped. He grabbed his radio. "Base, this is Riley. I'm coming in." No response. He kept walking until he saw the trail marker, but something was wrong. It wasn't the same one he'd passed earlier. The number read Trail 19A. There was no 19A on the Glacier Park map. By dusk, he stumbled onto a dirt road that led to a ranger outpost. He radioed again this time. Someone answered. It wasn't his base. It wasn't even his frequency. "You made it," the voice said. "Took you long enough." "Who is this?" Tom demanded. "We thought you'd stop at the fire." The line went dead. When he got back to headquarters, the supervisors told him there was no record of that transmission, no Trail 19A, and no recent activity on his channel. That was the last search Tom Riley ever led. He transferred to a desk job the next year, but before he left, he sealed something in a small evidence box and filed it under unclassified items. When he retired in 22, he gave it to a friend in confidence. Inside was a Polaroid photo, the same one from the boot, except now the image had changed. The fire pits were gone. The clearing was empty, but a single figure stood in the center of the frame facing the camera. It was Daniel. His face was pale, his eyes clouded, and his mouth was open as if caught mid-sentence. Scrawled across the bottom of the photo were two words, in handwriting that wasn't Daniel's. "Not alone." To this day, no one knows what happened to him. The Park Service officially lists him as missing, presumed deceased, but rangers still report hearing whistling late at night, echoing through the canyons of Glacier Park. And if you ever camp there alone, and you hear someone softly humming through the trees, don't whistle back, because whoever's making that sound isn't looking for help. They're looking for company. Story 5. The Screaming Lake at Grand Teton. Some places don't echo when you scream. They swallow the sound. They keep it. In the summer of 2017, two college friends, Laura and Ben, decided to take a weekend trip to Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. They were both photography students, obsessed with landscapes and sound design. Their plan was to camp by a remote lake they'd found on an old map, a spot labeled only as Lake 9. They wanted silence. They found something else. The hike to the lake took 5 hours. No other hikers, no trails, just GPS coordinates and instinct. By the time they reached it, the sun was dipping behind the Tetons. The water looked glassy, perfectly still, not even a ripple. No birds flew overhead, and the air was thick and heavy, like before a storm. Ben set up the camera while Laura recorded ambient audio. The goal was to capture pure natural silence. They didn't realize that silence in that place wasn't empty. It was waiting. Around 9 p.m., they started hearing noises not loud, but sharp, like rocks being thrown into the water. "Fish jumping," Ben said. Laura frowned. "There are no ripples." They checked the surface. Nothing moved, just reflections of the mountains, the trees, and the faint orange light of their campfire. Then Laura noticed something strange. The reflection of the mountains wasn't the same as the ones behind them. The peaks in the water were taller, and there was smoke rising from one of them. Ben laughed nervously. "Maybe distortion from the light." He pointed the camera toward the lake. The moment he did, the microphone started picking up static, loud, chaotic, like screaming under the surface. They turned it off immediately. When Laura played the recording back, the sound was gone, just quiet water. But when she adjusted the gain, a whisper came through faint but clear. "Leave." They should have left, but Ben wanted one more shot, a long exposure photo across the lake. He set the camera on the tripod and stepped back, counting down the shutter. 3, 2. A splash. Loud, heavy. He swung the flashlight toward the sound. Something was moving in the water, not swimming, just rising. A dark shape broke the surface, humanoid, but too tall, too still. Laura grabbed his arm. "Ben, turn it off." "It's fine," he said. "It's just—" The shape vanished. Then, from across the lake, his voice called back. "It's just—" They both froze. The echo repeated again, but this time it wasn't delayed. It was answering. "Ben, Laura, come here." The sound came from every direction, reflected off the water, impossibly close. Ben turned to grab the camera. The screen showed the reflection of the lake, but there were 3 figures standing beside the water now. 2 of them were real. The third one was moving closer. The camera fell. Ben grabbed Laura's hand and they ran into the woods. Didn't stop until the trees broke and they saw the stars again. When they finally turned back, the lake was glowing, not bright, but dimly, like light was pulsing beneath the surface. And faintly, they could hear screaming, hundreds of voices overlapping, rising and falling like waves. They didn't sleep that night. At sunrise, they hiked back to their car and drove straight out of the park. When they got to town, Laura noticed the camera bag in the back seat was soaked, dripping lake water onto the floor mat. Inside, the camera was on. The lens cracked. Battery nearly dead. The last photo on this card was of the lake, perfectly still, but if you looked closely, there were faces in the water stretched and pale, mouths open, eyes wide. They brought the footage to the park office, showed the rangers the photo. The senior ranger just stared for a long time, then quietly said, "You camped at Lake 9. "Yeah," Ben said. "Why?" "There is no Lake 9. He explained that the name came from an old survey map from 1934, a reservoir project that had flooded an entire valley. The workers had gone missing before the dam was finished. Their screams, locals said, could still be heard echoing off the mountains on windless nights. Ben and Laura left the office shaken but alive. They went home, deleted the recordings, and swore never to talk about it again. But a week later, Laura got an email. No subject, no sender. It contained a single file, an audio clip labeled Teton, WAV. When she played it, she heard her own voice whispering, "Leave," followed by Ben's voice. "It's just—" Then the sound of water rushing, crashing, and the faint, distant screaming of hundreds of voices beneath it. She unplugged the computer and threw the hard drive away. 3 months later, Ben was found dead in his apartment, drowned, in his bathtub. The coroner's report noted the water smelled faintly of algae and ash, the same scent you find near the Teton Lakes in early summer. On his nightstand was a camera. Inside, a single undeveloped roll of film. The photos showed a lake black, endless, no stars reflected on its surface. And in the final frame, a woman standing knee-deep in the water, looking straight at the camera. Laura. The police never found her, but park rangers say hikers still report hearing screams near an unmarked lake deep in Grand Teton, a place that doesn't show up on any map. If you ever find it, don't shout, don't even whisper. because whatever's in that water will remember your voice. And when the wind dies, it'll give it back. Story 6. The Woman Who Slept in the Watchtower. There are places in every national park that even the rangers avoid. Buildings left to rot, towers that sway in the wind, rooms that still smell like the people who never left them. This story is about one of those places. In 2014, a park volunteer named Erin Matthews took a summer position at Rocky Mountain National Park. She was 23, quiet, bookish, newly graduated, and she wanted solitude more than anything. When her supervisor asked if she'd be willing to stay overnight in an old fire watch tower, she said yes without hesitation. The tower sat on a ridge far from the main road, abandoned since the early 1980s when lightning fried the radio line. Her job was simple catalog storm data, report fires if she saw any. She would stay 3 nights. She lasted 2. The first day went fine. She unpacked, cleaned dust from the desk, and found an old journal left behind by a ranger decades earlier. Most of it was mundane weather patterns, equipment lists until the last entry. Lightning again tonight. Thought I saw someone by the tree line after the storm. Tower light keeps flickering. We'll fix in the morning. There were no further pages. At sunset, Erin radioed the main office. Her voice cracked with static, but she managed to report that everything was normal. She made tea, sat by the window, and watched the valley fade into black. Then she saw a light at the base of the hill, small, steady, like a lantern moving through the trees. She radioed again. "Is anyone scheduled near Tower 3 tonight?" No reply. Only the faint hiss of static and something else, a whisper, soft, rhythmic, like breathing. She shut the radio off. Around midnight, the storm rolled in. Rain pounded the roof, lightning flashed, and the bulb in the ceiling started flickering wildly. Erin sat at the desk, writing in her logbook, when she heard footsteps on the metal stairs outside. Slow, heavy. She froze. The wind howled, but the steps were distinct 3. Then a pause. Then 3 more. Someone was climbing. "Hello," she called. "Is someone out there?" No answer. The footsteps stopped, right outside the door. Then the doorknob turned once, twice, and stopped. She stared at it for a full minute, waiting for it to move again. It didn't. When she finally looked away, she caught her reflection in the window and behind her. For just a split second, another face. She spent the rest of the night sitting by the radio, too afraid to sleep. By morning, everything was calm again. Sunlight streamed through the glass. No footprints on the stairs, no signs of anyone nearby. She told herself it was nerves. First night alone in an old tower, of course she'd imagine things. That afternoon, she hiked down to the base to check the generator. It was still running, but when she opened the access panel, there was something carved inside the metal. "Stay awake." That night, the storm returned earlier. She locked the door, double-checked the windows, and set her radio to an open channel. At 10:42, a voice came through, crackling, distorted. "Tower 3, do you copy?" Relieved, she grabbed the mic. "Yes, this is Tower 3. Who is this?" "You shouldn't be there." "What?" "We closed that tower years ago." "Who is this?" The radio crackled again, then silence. She turned to look out the window. The lantern light was back brighter this time, halfway up the hill. She shut the blinds and backed away. The radio burst to life again, only this time it wasn't words. It was static, shaped like a scream, high-pitched, human, echoing inside the tower. The lights flickered out. The air turned cold. And from the stairwell below, the footsteps returned. This time faster. Clang, Clang, clang. Each step closer, heavier, until they stopped just outside the door again. Erin grabbed the flashlight, aimed it at the metal door. The beam shook in her hand. The knob began to turn, slowly, deliberately. She backed away until she hit the desk. The door creaked open an inch. Wind blew in cold, wet, smelling of smoke. No one was there. Then she heard it, from the radio speaker, a voice whispering, perfectly calm. "You saw me." She spun the dial off. The whisper kept going. "Now stay awake." Lightning flashed, and in that white burst of light, she saw someone standing in the corner of the room. A woman, same ranger uniform, hair soaked, eyes blackened from smoke. Erin blinked, and she was gone. She didn't sleep. At dawn, she packed her gear and started down the trail. Halfway down, she met two rangers coming up the ridge. "You must be Erin," one of them said. "We were told this tower was shut down." "No one told me," she said, shaking. "I was assigned here." They exchanged looks. "Ma'am," the older ranger said carefully, "Tower 3 burned down in 1984. There's nothing up there." Erin turned around. The hill was bare. No structure, no stairs, just blackened ground and a single metal pole sticking from the earth. At the top of it, swaying gently in the wind, was a burned nameplate. It read, "Hendricks Firewatch," the same name from the journal she'd read her first night. Erin quit the Park Service the next day. She never talked about what she saw. But a few years later, a backpacker uploaded a video from a ridge near that area. In the background, just for a moment, you can see something tall on the hill, a tower, half transparent, its light flashing faintly through the fog. If you slow the footage down, you can see someone in the window, a woman, looking out, as if waiting for something. And faintly, over the wind, you can hear a whisper caught on the microphone. "Stay awake." Story 7. The Trail Where Time Stopped. Some trails lead you back to where you started. Others never let you leave. In 2021, a retired park ranger named Robert Haynes took one last trip into Sequoia National Park. He'd worked there 35 years, watched thousands of visitors come and go, rescued hikers, managed fires, and spent more nights under the trees than in his own bed. After retiring, he said he wanted to walk every trail one more time to say goodbye. He called it his farewell hike. He never came home. According to park logs, Robert signed in at the Marble Falls trailhead around 6:40 a.m. Weather clear, visibility excellent, no storm warnings. The rangers who found his gear later said it looked like he'd simply sat down for lunch, his thermos half empty, his notebook open, his watch still ticking. Only the date on the page didn't make sense. It read June 14th, 1983. Robert's wife, Elaine, said he'd been struggling with memory loss. Maybe it was stress, maybe nostalgia. But the journal told a different story. The entries from that week grew stranger each day. "Trail feels off today. Hard to explain, like the sun's taking longer to move. Heard a radio call on Channel 7. Thought the towers were down. Someone's following me. I think it's me." The search began after he missed 2 check-ins. A team of 6 rangers combed the trail from top to bottom. They found boot prints that matched his size, but they stopped halfway up the ridge as if he'd simply vanished mid-step. The lead ranger, Paul Graham, reported hearing something unusual near that spot, a faint clicking, like an old film reel spinning. When he turned his radio on, he caught a short burst of static followed by Robert's voice. "Don't follow. It's stuck here." Then silence. 2 days later, they found the watchtower logbook. It was hidden under a fallen tree near the Marble Falls overlook. The last page had a note scribbled across it. The trail resets every night. Underneath that, a map hand-drawn, showing the trail bending back into itself like a spiral. And at the center, a small X labeled home. Here's what Paul told investigators later. He went back alone that evening, against protocol. He said he needed to see it for himself. As he walked the ridge, the air grew still. The forest around him stopped moving, no wind, no sound, not even the buzzing of insects. When he checked his watch, the second hand had frozen. 6:47 p.m. He stood there for what felt like hours, but when he looked again, it was still 6:47. That's when he saw Robert. The old ranger was standing about 20 yards down the trail, half hidden by sunlight. He looked exactly the same as in his ID photo, same hat, same jacket, same gentle posture. Robert Paul called. Robert raised a hand, smiled faintly, and said, "It's still today." "We've been looking for you," Paul said, taking a step closer. Robert shook his head. "Don't. You'll get caught." "Caught by what?" Robert's smile faltered. "By the loop." Then he turned and started walking slowly, as if moving through water. Paul followed, calling after him, but the moment he rounded the bend, the trail behind him was gone. Only fog. He said the forest felt wrong after that, colors too bright, air too heavy. He walked for hours without seeing the sun move. When he finally stopped, he found himself back at the same fallen tree. The same logbook, the same page. But now there was a new line beneath Robert's handwriting. "It's not tomorrow yet." Paul made it back to the base before dawn, disoriented but unharmed. He tried to explain what had happened, but his story didn't fit time. His GPS log showed his route looping in a perfect circle, over and over for 6 straight hours. The park officially listed Robert Haynes as missing, presumed deceased, but rangers who've worked there since say they still hear faint radio clicks on Channel 7, especially around dusk. Sometimes a voice comes through, calm, familiar. Still today. In 23, a new volunteer found something strange near that same ridge. A camera, rusted but intact, wedged between 2 roots. Inside was a film roll that somehow hadn't been destroyed by weather. When developed, the photos showed the Marble Falls trail, but different. The sky was overcast, the trees older, and in one frame, you could see a ranger standing by the overlook railing, holding a radio. It was Robert. In the next photo, the same scene, but the sky was clear, and the man at the railing was Paul. Same angle, same position, taken 10 years apart. Elaine still visits the park once a year. She says it's the only place she feels him. The last time she went, she stopped at the overlook and set down his old compass. When she opened it, the needle spun wildly, then stopped, pointing straight behind her. She turned, but no one was there, only her shadow stretching across the dirt. Later, when she looked at the photo she'd taken of that moment, she noticed something chilling 2 shadows, both wearing ranger hats. Some trails are built to bring you back, others are built to keep you. If you ever find yourself hiking and notice the light hasn't changed for a while, if your watch refuses to move, or your radio starts playing your own voice back to you, turn around. Leave your pack. Run if you have to. Because if the trail decides it likes you, it won't let you leave. It'll keep you there, forever repeating the same day, until you forget there was ever a world outside the trees. National parks are meant to protect nature from us, but sometimes it feels like they're protecting us from what's inside them. Every path we walk has been walked before. Every tree has listened to 100 stories whispered in the dark. And every ranger who disappears leaves behind one more voice echoing through the wilderness. You tell yourself it's the wind, that the fog is harmless, that the sound behind you is just another branch breaking. But the truth is simpler. The wilderness watches, it listens, and sometimes it remembers. From the ranger who never left his post, to the voices in the canyon, to the trails that loop forever, these stories aren't about ghosts. They're about places that don't want to be forgotten. You can still visit them. You can still walk their paths. But when the air grows heavy and the world goes too still, you'll know you've stepped somewhere that doesn't belong to time anymore. If you ever hike alone and hear someone call your name, don't answer. If you see a light that shouldn't be there, don't follow. And if you ever feel the forest leaning closer as you breathe, don't stop. Because every echo out there started with a real voice. Someone who thought they were just passing through. Someone who thought the park was safe. Now their footsteps are part of the trail. Thank you for listening to these 7 true national park horror stories. And if you ever visit one yourself, remember this. You're not walking alone. You're walking where others stopped. And sometimes the park remembers them better than the world ever did.